Hello there. Today I watched God is a Bullet, and now I want to save you from the pain I experienced. God is a Bullet is a crime drama written by Boston Tarrant and Nick Cassavetes, who also directed the film. The film sees a cult brutally murder a woman and her husband and kidnap her daughter. The woman's ex-husband is a detective who becomes obsessed with the case and ends up going rogue in order to rescue his little girl. Nikolaj Coster-Waldau stars as the lead, Bob Hightower. He's accompanied on his mission by a former cult member, Case Harden, played by Micah Monroe, and they're helped along the way by the mysterious ferryman, played by Jamie Foxx. As a film, it's a second-rate crime drama with a story that doesn't make much sense, a soundtrack that is distracting, and a visual journey that isn't coherent. The only redeeming feature is the cast. The story is easily the most disappointing aspect of the film. It doesn't make sense in a number of different ways, it doesn't develop its characters, and the dialogue is atrocious. It also isn't exciting. It doesn't make sense because at numerous points in the story, Bob incurs lethal wounds. He's sliced open, set on fire, beaten severely with a bat, and bitten by a venomous snake, yet somehow walks away from this journey with only a few mild burns. The cult also doesn't make any sense. We never learn what their goals are, why they chose the family, or anything about them. We know 3 or 4 members' names, but that's about it. Everything else about them is just screaming generic psycho killer. They even go down in one of the most insane battles I've ever seen. Bob actually had an entire firing squad shooting at him, and none of them could hit him. It was beyond ridiculous. Most of the events of the story just happen, without rhyme or reason, and the film doesn't even feel the need to explain how it happened most of the time. It's jarring at best and incredibly confusing at worst. Then there's the lack of character development. We don't learn anything about the main villain, aside from a generic sob story, and Bob and Case are just generic stereotypes. Bob is the good man who's willing to do anything to save his kid, and Case is the degenerate who wants a second chance. They're both pretty boring as characters, and the film doesn't do anything to make them stand out. On top of all that, there's awful dialogue everywhere in this movie. The cult is constantly going on about death and their problems with society, but they all sound like half-baked political nerds with an edgy aesthetic. They say things to be scary and to create an image, but it rarely makes sense. That said, the premise at the core of this film can definitely work. And I know that because it's not an original concept. It's basically taken with a slightly younger man and a less consistent journey. If they had taken the time to improve the writing, it might have actually been exciting. As it is, the story is just absurd and it's next to impossible to get into. Visually, this movie takes place in a lot of dark and dingy locations and a number of outdoor sets. Think parking lots, bars, and truck stops. Most of the people in the film are covered in tattoos, dressed like they're cosplaying their favorite Fallout characters, and act like soccer hooligans. They light the characters in a way that makes them pop and aim for cinematic looking moments. It leads to some nice visuals like Case and Bob talking in a slick restaurant or a nice setting outside the window as they drive. The action is short and incredibly violent. The few small segments include people getting shot and stabbed, a lot of gore, and Bob even getting set on fire with a flamethrower at one point. It's so short you'll miss if you blink it, and often it isn't that exciting. It happens without any impact beyond the disgust factor from the gore. The journey itself feels like they cut away huge parts of it in order to save time, and what's presented doesn't always make sense. Like during the big confrontation, we only see a little bit of Bob and Case's preparation time, and yet nothing we see them do gets used in the actual fight. It's just wasted time that didn't serve the story at all. Sound-wise, the film has a lot of flavorful tracks that fill out the background, but almost all of them come in too loudly and compete directly with the dialogue. The ambient noise that appears in the film does too. It makes it really hard to understand what's being said, and even though the songs add quite a bit to the atmosphere, they also gave me a bit of a headache with how loud they were. On a positive note, we hear a good variety of genres, and the music is often original songs that match well with the scene. They weren't so loud, they backed the scenes well and entertain. Cast-wise, the film boils down to 2 performances with a lot of extras in the background. Nikolaj Coster-Waldau and Micah Monroe play the 2 lead characters and get the vast majority of the screen time. Coster-Waldau is Bob Hightower as an older Southern detective. Despite his character being described as a desk jockey, he takes quickly to murder and mayhem but always tries to do the right thing. At first he's consumed by his mission, but on the way he starts to see the humanity in Case and ends up helping her too. Waldau does well with the emotions of a torn-up father potentially grieving his daughter, and he comes off as a reckless and damn near suicidal man when he's going after the cult. The only problem I had with his portrayal was the love storyline near the end. He didn't seem that into it, and it seemed to come out of left field. He's so much older than her that he just looks like her dad. Micah Monroe as Case is a former drug addict and cult member. She still carries all the signs of being a degenerate, talking like a sailor, being needlessly aggressive, and having no tact, but at the heart of the character is a decent person traumatized by a horrible situation. Monroe plays the role convincingly and shows off a surprising amount of charisma. Her character comes off as a highly interesting train wreck. The rest of the cast is just generic bad guy performances and the occasional extra. The villains are good at looking crazy and mean, but there's nothing else to them beyond that. They just come off as psychotic. As a whole, God is a Bullet is another generic crime drama with poor writing. The story barely makes sense, the characters are stereotypes, and the dialogue is awful. The visual journey is confusing, the soundtrack is too loud, and the only redeeming feature is the lead's performance. There just isn't anything to get out of this film. 4 out of 10. And remember, these are just my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Bye bye!